What's up guys, today I really want to revisit Xiangling, who has been consistently on the rise as a unit to use in harder content like combat events and Spiral Abyss. With the new Inazuma updates, Xiangling has only gotten better and now is the perfect time to build her up, or just give her some upgrades if you already have her on older artifacts. Some of the new options in the game are ridiculously good for Xiangling, and today I'm going to cover all the recommended builds from the new stuff to the classic builds. As always, I'll start off with her best artifacts and weapons as a Pyro DPS, then I'll cover a few teams with Xiangling that are in flavor and super popular currently. Without further ado, let's get this guide rolling. Unlike my other guide videos, I'm actually going to switch it up a tiny bit and start with weapons instead of artifacts. I'm doing this on purpose as I think the easiest way to build Xiangling is to pick a weapon based on what you have, then focus on getting the right artifacts to complement that weapon. Starting off with the best in slot polearm, there's actually no definitive choice for Xiangling because the top 3 weapons can outperform each other depending on her teammates and the buffs that they provide. The big 3 weapons for Xiangling are definitely going to be the Catch, Engulfing Lightning, and Staff of Homa. In general, players will opt to use the Catch on Xiangling since units like Hu Tao or Zhongli will want Staff of Homa, and Raiden Shogun will definitely be using your Engulfing Lightning. Without getting deep into the math side of things, the Catch at R5 can even outdamage the other 5-star weapons at R1, which is actually crazy considering the weapon is permanently free for all players. As for your other weapon options, we can pretty much round off the 5-star polearm cast with the Primordial Jade Wing Spear and the Scoured Spine at numbers 4 and 5 respectively. I'll dive more into this when we move into the next section, but Primordial Jade Wing Spear provides some really nice stats that gives flexibility in your artifact options. On the other hand, Scoured Spine is an overall solid weapon for Xiangling that's especially useful if you're able to use the full passive. An example of where this weapon shines is in the national team, where Xiangling will be normal attacking a lot to utilize Xingqiu's Rain Swords. Following at number 6, we have the Deathmatch, and in the 7 and 8 spots we have Lithic Spear and Dragon's Bane. Deathmatch is pretty much just Primordial Jade Wing Spear with a little bit more crit rate but a lot less attack. This weapon is the perfect solution for low spenders, coming in at only $10 with the Battle Pass. As for Dragon's Bane, when this weapon is R5, it can outperform both the R1 Deathmatch and Lithic Spear. However, the reason why I put it below all the previous options is because with Elemental Mastery, the stat requirements for your artifacts are extremely high. Chances are you'll need some great luck or some resin refreshes to get the right artifacts when running Dragon's Bane. Last but not least, in the 9th spot we have Favonius Lance. Although the damage from this weapon is not anything special, I'm a huge fan of the utility it provides. I'm sure many of you know that Xiangling has some glaring energy problems, and the passive of this weapon is the perfect band-aid to that problem. Not only this, but the weapon can also be used to funnel energy particles into other characters. The idea of generating extra energy particles for other characters is extremely useful and is commonly used in teams such as the national team. That covers all the weapons I wanted to recommend, but I know there are a few more viable options that people are going to ask about. On screen, there's a list of polearms that are either outclassed by other polearms on Xiangling, or they're just extremely niche and not worth chasing unless you have specific units. My advice is that even though these weapons are viable options, do your best to get one of the previous polearms that I discussed. Moving into artifacts, Xiangling's recommended sets are the exact same as they once were, aside from her best in slot. Things do get a little complicated once we move into artifact stats, but I'll do my best to explain things as we go. Now, the set that most players should aim for when building Xiangling is the 4-set Emblem of Severed Fate. Xiangling is a very energy-hungry unit, and all of her Pyro DPS is concentrated into her strong Elemental Burst. This set will not only make Xiangling a little easier to build, but it also perfectly complements her playstyle no matter which team you decide to use her in. For the other combinations, we have the classic options from the 1.0 patch. The next artifact set that I want to talk about is the 4-set Crimson Witch of Flames. This set is exceptionally good in team comps where Xiangling will be triggering a ton of melt and vaporize reactions. If Xiangling is simply setting up the Pyro Aura for other characters, aside from the 4-set Emblem of Severed Fate, any combination of the 2 sets on screen are viable options. Generally, you want to pick these two sets if you have some godly substats on your pieces, or if you're still trying to farm the 4-set Emblem of Severed Fate. As for artifact stats, this is where things get convoluted. The reason I decided to discuss weapon options beforehand is because choosing artifact main stats is actually influenced by the polearm you decide to run on Xiangling. In the Hourglass, we want energy recharge or attack percent, in the Goblet we want pyro damage bonus, and in the Circlet we want crit rate or crit damage. The Goblet is super easy, and the Circlet slot is simply just picking a crit stat that you need the most, but the Hourglass is where you need to pay attention to Xiangling's weapon. I'm going to make things simple for the sake of the video's length, but because this is a TLDR explanation, treat this as a general guideline rather than a hard rule that you need to follow. The best thing you can do for your Xiangling is have a nice crit ratio and 170 to 200% energy recharge without sacrificing too much attack. Anyways, for the guidelines, if you're running Scoured Spine, the Catch, or Favonius Lance, it will be the easiest if you run attack percent in the Sands and focus energy recharge in your substats. The weapons that are most compatible with energy recharge in the Sands are Primordial Jade Wing Spear, Vortex Vanquisher, Lithic Spear, Staff of Homa, and Engulfing Lightning. All these weapons have some way to grant extra attack and are perfect fits if you have some pieces with some really good attack percent substats. For any other weapon I did not list, it doesn't matter whether you choose attack percent or energy recharge as a main stat. What matters the most are the substats of your artifacts and the nice crit ratio and benchmark energy recharge that I mentioned before. As for substat priority, crit rate and crit damage trump all other stats, but after that we have energy recharge, attack percent, elemental mastery, and flat attack. With an attack percent Sands, energy recharge is more important in substats, but with an ER Sands it's the opposite. Hopefully my explanations were enough for you to understand how to build Xiangling. With the majority of the guide out of the way, let me quickly showcase my own Xiangling build in case you guys needed an example or if you're just curious about my own build. Now that you've seen my Xiangling build, let's take her into Spiral Abyss to showcase her in action while I talk about some of the popular Xiangling teams. Kicking things off with team comps, this one should be no surprise to anyone. Probably one of the most popular teams to ever grace Genshin Impact, we have the National Team. I'm not going to talk too much about this one since I have a whole guide dedicated to the National Team, which you can find at the top right of your screen or in the description box of this video. The classic National Team consists of Xiangling, Bennett, and Xingqiu, plus Chongyun or Sucrose in the last slot. More recent versions have made replacements of the 4th slot with characters like Kazuha or Raiden Shogun. In short, the premise of this team is simply to snapshot buffs onto Xiangling's elemental burst and then abuse pyro reactions to further increase Xiangling's damage output. With the Chongyun and Sucrose variants, this team is one of the most free-to-play friendly teams that can compete with even the strongest of the 5-star DPS characters. For our second team comp, we have a duo of Xiangling and Childe. Thanks to Childe's fast hydro application, Xiangling's main purpose is to land Vaporize hits while Childe takes up field time with his melee form. For the 3rd slot, Bennett is a no-brainer since he kind of acts like glue to create a powerful core between the first 2 units. In the last slot, an Anemo unit like Sucrose or Kazuha are generally the favorites to further buff the team. However, the 2 other characters that I like the best for the last slot are Zhongli and Diona. Both of these units provide large shields that make it easy for Childe to maneuver and maximize his melee stance. For the 3rd and last composition that I want to talk about today, we have the Reverse Melt team with Ganyu and Xiangling. Reverse Melt is Ganyu's highest potential damage output currently, but it comes at the cost of being close range since Xiangling's Pyronado does not have a large range. However, the issue of close combat can be solved with the remaining character slots. For the 3rd character, generally I like to recommend a Shielder, which again will bring us back to Diona and Zhongli. Xin Yan is also somewhat viable here since she can provide a little bit more energy for Xiangling, but keep in mind that her shield is a lot more flimsy. In the last slot, Bennett, Kazuha, or Venti are going to be your standard options. Bennett and Venti provide Xiangling with more energy, which is definitely going to be useful given that Ganyu hogs most of the field time. Even with an energy battery, Xiangling will want upwards of 200% energy recharge. I've even seen some Ganyu players with 250% energy recharge on their Xiangling just to ensure that no time is wasted and that her elemental burst is ready off cooldown. With that, it's time to wrap up the video. I've been using Xiangling pretty much everywhere recently and wanted to make sure that my channel would have the latest builds for her. With that being said, if you enjoyed this guide or thought it was useful, be sure to support both the video and the channel. Other than that, it's the same as always. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.